Hey, buddy, don't go snooping, all right? Why don't you stay where I can see you, tough guy?
Here we are, chumps! Take it, motherfuckers! Take it! I give you the man! Yeah!
Daniel, you're outnumbered! Time is right here, you fool!
This wasn't supposed to happen, Danny. The breach in your head is malfunctioning.
Project Darkhunt is what you would call a good mod concept that's executed in a rather mixed way. It has its strengths, and when the gameplay shines, it really stands out as a fun and challenging way to shake up Manhunt 2's regular gameplay. However, it's not perfect. It has flaws, and they're pretty noticeable right out of the gate. Some are just cosmetic, like the way certain executions play out, while others are more game-breaking, including crashes and things of the sort. It's best to break it down piece by piece, and it should be a pretty straightforward thing since the story is the same as the retail. This isn't a beta recreation or restoration mod. It pretty much just follows the typical factions and locations and names from retail Manhunt. The only exception is that the textures have really been polished up. There's some really gorgeous looking scenery and buildings and things of the sort. It's a fresh coat of paint that makes the game look nice, and for the most part, it doesn't clash with the art style. You'll notice the difference almost immediately, and it looks great. I mean, there are some instances, like in the second level of Ghosts, where you can find buildings that look kinda odd, and it's because the textures are a little too realistic, and the choice of clothing can be odd at times, like giving Daniel Lamb an Adidas jumpsuit. I mean, what is this, Spider-Man 2? Topical humor aside, I think that the textures are a nice improvement, and they didn't really cause any issues on performance on my end, so it wasn't a fault there either. The gameplay is pretty much the same loop as any other Manhunt 2 mod or even retail Manhunt 2. Stealth, hiding from enemies, performing grisly executions for style points, and getting into gunfights in the later levels. The big difference is how damage is dealt. Melee hits are much more powerful, whether by your hands or an enemy's hands, to the point where, like, 3-hit combo is enough to kill most enemies. Usually 4 hits is enough to take them down either, same with you. And guns almost always instantly kill. This goes from the light handgun, to the Desert Eagle, to the revolver, the SMG. The shotgun depends on how many pellets hit, so you can potentially survive. And of course the assault rifle just instant kills, along with the sniper. Well, the sniper rifle is nerfed in enemy hands, but it does make things a little more fair, in all honesty. This has some interesting consequences, gameplay-wise. It ends up really prioritizing stealth in some levels, because you cannot afford to get into running gunfights with enemies. You have to be precise and be very cautious. One shot is enough to drop you and put you back at the previous checkpoint. So caution and strategy is key, and it makes hiding in the shadows and using stealth takedowns all the more viable. Interestingly, this also gives a boost to melee combat. It isn't as drawn out, and that means that it's a little more viable to go toe-to-toe with an individual enemy, but if more than one shows up, you're usually screwed over, so you need to really hide. On one hand, the guns they're more beneficial in your favor, because even the light handgun will just one-shot enemies consistently. No need to even aim for the head or anything. This also goes for you, though, so while you can potentially clear out enemies really easily, they can also take you down quickly if they get a bead on you. It's especially apparent in gun-heavy levels, such as Release Therapy, and even Best Friends and Safe House, where you're going to have to be very, very careful playing it, otherwise you will just die from a stray bullet, or you'll get into a fight that turns out to be disastrous. This can become a huge problem. Release Therapy was an absolute grueling aspect to go through, because every enemy in that level carries a gun, and there are some points where you're up against multiple enemies with automatic firearms barreling through doors, and all it takes is one tap from an assault rifle or an SMG to put you in the ground. So it can be really frustrating. There were times I had to keep restarting the same checkpoint over and over to try to make up for the repeated deaths I experienced. However, some levels are actually easier as a consequence of this. I noticed that Broadcast Interrupted was actually a lot easier to some degree. Some points were tough, like the initial entry into the broadcasting center for the kids' channels, but the parts that usually got me, like the long hallway and the intro to the assault rifle and the parking garage, I found those were actually a lot fairer, because you can efficiently eliminate enemies from a range and it isn't an issue. So it's a weird tightrope walk of balance. It mostly works, but when it gets frustrating, it gets really, really frustrating.
The mongoose is in the cookie jar! The Central, the mongoose took a long nap.
There isn't really much in the way of new content in it, aside from the new textures and the changed stats. Like, you're not going to see beta enemies or beta concepts brought back. I mean, the mod does come with the 3 levels of execution for guns and restored executions on those fronts, but some are bugged, especially the handgun ones, where the wrong sounds will play for them instead of the ones that are supposed to be appropriate. And there's also a common bug I found where the handgun executions leave your enemy frozen in midair after they're done. This happened a lot. This wasn't just a one-off bug. It kept occurring to the point where I'd have to just grab enemies and hide them in the shadows after that, because they were standing up in the open and anybody could see them. There's also a strange addition of a handgun in red light. There aren't firearms in that level outside of the watchdogs shooting at you at the end. I thought it was going to be a neat addition, but it's more like a melee weapon. And it has the same issue with the handgun executions that the other weapons do. I'm not sure why it was added. Maybe, I don't know, to just simulate the idea of an empty weapon being used as a melee weapon. It was odd. I did not expect to be beating the crap out of the Red Kings with an empty handgun, but, I mean, worse things have happened. Plus, there was the addition of the flashlights in Domestic Disturbance. I think that's the only time in a mod so far where I've seen it added, despite the fact that it's present in the PS2 and PSP versions of the game. I mean, it is pretty much similar to the baton, but still, variety is nice, and it adds extra difficulty because enemies can find you in the shadows with it. Other issues that I noticed were about the stability of the game. There were times it would just crash. I'm not sure what caused Project Darkhunt to just lock up. I have some theories, but it was tough to kind of recreate them. After restarting at the dinner table checkpoint too many times in release therapy, it crashed. When I was looking for the syringe and personality clash, it crashed. Those were the two big ones I remembered. It also comes with a version of the MH2 plugin that doesn't really work too well. I'd recommend replacing it with the normal version when you get the chance, if you're going to play the mod, because it doesn't quite do what the author had intended. It doesn't skip the opening legal screens. I don't know if it enables some of the features that he had intended, but installing the regular plugin will grant you more options, like being able to choose first person and so on and so forth. Overall, the mod it felt like a fair shakeup. The mod's a tough place to put difficulty-wise, because there are some parts where it feels like it's just a rework of the game. You could say the difficulty is a little tougher, but levels like Assassination are very hard. The opening segments of it are brutal. Once you get on the rooftops, it isn't too bad, but the elevator segment's a nightmare, where you're going up each floor and fighting a couple of Project Militia guys each way, because they often get the drop on you and one hit's all it takes. Same goes for some of the opening ambush sections where enemies have guns, like in Release Therapy, as mentioned before. But outside of that, I'd say that Project Darkhunt's fun. It's not perfect, it has flaws, it could use some refinement and polish, but it changes up the gameplay in a significant way. It makes Manhunt 2 simultaneously more reliant on stealth and also more energetic when it comes to combat, because you're taking risks when you're getting into open fights with enemies. If one of their buddies with a gun notices you, then you're as good as dead. Or if you're being faced with more than one enemy and you can't reliably hit them both. So it can get pretty intense, but it also forces you to revisit levels in ways you hadn't considered, where you're like, okay, I know there are gun enemies up ahead, who should I prioritize? Or like, this guy who's way far away with a shotgun can now reliably one-tap me if enough pellets hit. So you have to think about strategies and rework how you would approach levels. Again, stealth is the big push, but you can still go in guns a-blazing with cover and enough patience. Just be prepared to restart a lot if you're going to take that approach. I know I really had to.
Watchdogs, here, quickly!
So shout out to the creator of Project Darkhunt for making this. It was a really unique mod, and I like the increased difficulty, the increased power of firearms and melee weapons, and the way it completely reshaped some levels to be harder than others, or to feel more balanced at times. It's fun overall, even if I couldn't finish Personality Clash due to the crash in it. I hope that the bugs in Release Therapy and Personality Clash are fixed, along with whatever bugs are happening with the handgun executions. Because it's nice to see some of that cut content restored, even if the purpose of the mod isn't to be a beta restoration. Manhunt 2 just has a lot of cool features that should have made into the final version of the game, so I like it when the community takes it upon themselves to bring them back.
Those cops knew who you were. You're gonna have to change those clothes.
Wait, what's this? Judy? Michael said they messed with my head.
So, thanks for tuning in to this review of Manhunt 2 Project Darkhunt. A link in the description will bring you to the ModDB page for it. Let me know what you think about it in the comments. Have a good one. Take care, guys.